What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to revisit the Shelby GT500 Americar Edition, which is now going to be available here in the game for bucks, and you can actually buy this thing. It's kind of insane it actually came out around 2 years ago, so to see this car return is always going to be a great sight to see, especially when some of these older cars actually do return into the Crew 2. It's kind of insane that there's going to be only 29 Rallycross vehicles in this game, and some are probably going to be insanely good, meanwhile others are honestly not all that great. Not going to mention any names here, but my goodness, I'm looking at you, Challenger SRT8 392. What in the world are you doing over there? But regardless, guys, some of these cars really are going to be pretty decent overall, and then some of them are just going to be downright absolutely insane, like the Lancer WRC05. So any new vehicle and or some of these cars that do actually return, I'm sure a lot of players are most likely going to be examining them to see if they're actually decent enough to be used. I would say the Americar Edition is actually going to be insanely unique compared to the other cars. One of the first things I noticed about this thing, guys, is the fact that upon first glance, you're going to notice how the frame is designed on this car, basically just like a demolition derby vehicle. You can see how the frame is in there, plus like the roll cage and like the entire framing of the car. I also notice under here you can actually see the engine and or the exhaust. And I really do have to give it to Ubisoft with the overall design of this GT500. It really is insane, guys, how you can basically see every piece of detail of this car, basically all the way down to like the framing and or like the radiator, plus seeing like part of the engine. I really did actually think this car was going to be like a demolition derby, mainly because a lot of those cars do tend to have a lot of detail. But if you guys are into the Shelbys and or any Mustang, I would definitely recommend taking a look at this vehicle. Plus we also do get some rims as well. These are going to be the ones I am running on mine, but you also have these. Then we're going to have a few more as well, which is definitely pretty cool, especially with this being a rallycross vehicle. A lot of them do tend to not have that many upgrades and or some ugly rims from the Crew 2. I really do hope we're going to have more rims being added into Motorfest, especially like real rims. I think that would honestly be awesome. But one thing I also did want to mention though, guys, the tires I am running on this car are also not going to be stock. So I'm running the Blaze of Glory tire. I, for some odd reason, think it really does fit this car insanely well, and it's kind of funny how it actually fits the livery with this thing. So overall, guys, I would say this car is going to be pretty dang insane. Now, moving over to the performance, though, there is going to be a few things I do want to go over because it has been a minute since I've driven this car. I really cannot believe it's been about 2 years since this thing actually did release, but when it comes to the top speed on the Americar Edition, it's going to be around 183 miles per hour. So it's probably not going to be like the fastest rallycross car out there. Like some of them hit like 190 to like 195 miles per hour as well. But this thing really is going to reach some pretty high speeds. But one of the biggest things I noticed though is if you guys are running manual, this is going to be a 4-speed. So many of the cars in the Crew 2 with a 4-speed transmission do tend to have some pretty poor off-the-line acceleration. I was noticing, guys, on a few of these events, even on Ace, you basically do have to catch up to them. I was noticing going first into second with this GT500 is probably going to be pretty dang slow. And if you were to use something like this car going against like a WRC05, you're most likely going to get smoked in every single way. But I did notice though, once you get into third and fourth gear, I did notice this car really does shine. And one of the biggest things about it is the fact that you really can stay around corners in third gear, and you really don't have to go back down into second all that often. But one of the biggest highlights about this GT500 is by far going to be its handling. I really do think this is actually going to be one of the best handling rallycross vehicles in the Crew 2, which is probably going to be a pretty big statement considering there is going to be 28 other cars in this class though, and some of them really do struggle. Talking to you right now, Challenger, but some of these cars really do struggle a bit in certain areas. So seeing something like this Shelby handle this good, I was having a great time with this car racing this thing on some of the tracks and or messing around with it on like the Temecula wineries. This thing handles so dang good, guys. You're most likely going to love the handling, even though the overall acceleration is probably not going to be the best, at least off the line though. I really do think that's probably going to be the only issue with this car, but when testing out this Shelby GT500, guys, the biggest thing for me is probably going to come down to its overall stability around corners. I did notice some of the cars in the Crew 2, especially some of the Lancias in the Rallycross category, do tend to be kind of twitchy and or just very unstable in certain areas, and I do feel like that's going to take a lot of confidence away from a player if you're having issues going around a corner. I for one am most likely never going to run some of those cars over something like the Shelby here. Even though some of those cars are most likely going to accelerate faster, I do think the Shelby's going to be a lot more fun around corners, and as I did mention before, guys, once you actually do get the speed up on this car, it really is going to be an absolute blast to use, especially on the bigger tracks. And you can also jump into some of these smaller ones and still do insanely good with it, which we all do know how some of these smaller tracks handling is going to be insanely important, and you also have to dodge the insane AI along the way. So the Shelby GT500 for me is basically going to be like a blast from the past, because my goodness, this car really has been absent for a long time. The GT500 Americar Edition is definitely going to be a blast from the past though. I really do feel like a lot of players are going to love this car, and I do think a lot of people most likely don't have it. And luckily we can actually mess around with some of these old cars before Motorfest and or Season 9 does release. Definitely let me know your thoughts on this Americar Edition in the comments below. This car really was insanely rare, at least for the time being, and now 2 years later we actually have a chance to run this Shelby once again, but I would really like to know what you guys think about this car in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more insight.